Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Lieutenant Stephen Rogers here at the Canadian edition of the Patriot Desk. We have a very interesting guest tonight, and I'll share in a few moments who he is, and he'll be on with us. But a couple of programming notes. On Monday night, during the U.S. edition, we're going to have an individual who is very involved with the Second Amendment rights of this country. As many of you know, the Supreme Court sided with the people today. And it looks like we're in for some changing of our laws here in America with regard to the right to bear arms. The Constitution of the United States was upheld by the U.S. Supreme Court, which was a direct slap in the face to the Democrat communists of this country. And more's to come, more's to come. So we'll talk about that on Monday night. Now, on Thursday night, here's what we're going to do. We're not going to have a broadcast Thursday night because we're moving it to Friday night. And we're going to participate in the celebration of Canada Day. And we're going to have some great guests coming on, and we're going to just talk about how wonderful and how great the people of Canada are, and moving forward, how the relationship between the United States of America and the Canadian people has been forged to a point that something like we've never seen before in history. So we want to be part of your celebration come July 1st. All right, folks, so I'll be back in about 15 seconds, and then I'll be introducing our guest to you. Thank you.
Turn it up.
So there you go, folks. POWERBLAST Canada, a great company. We've gotten a lot of emails from people after seeing the commercials. In fact, that company is sponsoring some of our broadcasts, wondering if there's a company like that here in the United States, and namely them. They do a great job, and we're honored to have them help us out in the fight for freedom and liberty. What do you think of that, folks? Small business people all across Canada, all across the United States, coming together to do what? To work together for our freedom and liberty. Now, my next guest, I've got to tell you, I'm really fascinated over who you're going to hear from tonight. We've heard a lot about the pandemic. We've heard a lot about COVID, about wearing masks, about mandates, about rules and regulations. We hear all kinds of stuff coming from all kinds of people. Here in America, the CDC, every day, they're flipping their decisions from one end of the nation to the other. So I've lost all confidence in them. But there are good people out there working very hard to get down to facts, to get down to truth. Now, before I introduce my guest, there's a few things I'm going to share with you. We are going to be talking about the pandemic and some of the research this individual has done. I believe that you're going to hear things you've never heard before, and I ask you to listen carefully. There's a couple of disclaimers that I have to share with you, because I could tell you, as soon as we go off the air, the fact checkers will be on. The red flags are going to go up on Facebook and other social media platforms. So we're going to give them something that will save them a lot of trouble. Number one, you're going to hear from a professional forensic engineer who's going to talk to you about his research and his conclusions regarding the pandemic and other issues surrounding that. We will share with you that it is up to you to decide based on the information that you receive from all quarters, especially from our guest tonight. You decide how you feel about the information, and then you draw your conclusions and decisions. I'm glad he's on because, folks, I've got to tell you, all we hear is from the official government agencies. All we hear is from those so-called experts, but we're not hearing from people like our next guest. So it's up to you, number one, whether you want to get the vaccine or not, whether you want to abide by mandates, whether you want to get the jab, whatever. It's all up to you. So you fact checkers out there and Facebook world, who I know you're watching, you heard it from me. All right. These are the guest conclusions that he is sharing with an audience who will do what? who will draw their own conclusions. That's why Campaign for America has in its mission statement, we empower, we educate, and we inspire for people to do what? To get all the information they could from all kinds of quarters and then draw their own conclusions. So, folks, I want to introduce to you a real great scientist, if I could call him that. He's actually a forensic engineer. Ken Drysdale, thanks for joining us tonight.
It's a pleasure to be here. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Well, I've got to tell you, my discussion with you earlier off air just fascinated me. So I'm going to begin by asking you this question, Ken. Would you share with our audience, and we have an American audience also, okay? So we've got a lot of people watching. Would you share with our audience who you are, a little bit about your background? And unlike television, we don't interrupt you and cut you short, okay? Unless, of course, I have a question, I'll jump in. But your background, and how in the world did you end up researching what you shared with me? I just think it's fascinating. So it's all yours.
I'm a professional engineer here in Canada, and I used to own an engineering company up until the time I retired in 2016. So over the course of about 40 years, part of my professional business was doing forensic analysis. And really what that is we used to say if something fell down, blew up, broke, or didn't work, they would call me, one side or the other would call me in a dispute, and then I would research what had happened, put together some kind of a report that would generally be used in legal proceedings, and very often that would end up in court testifying about what the circumstances were and what the causations were. So that's kind of a little bit on my background. You can't really encapsulate all your experience in 2 or 3 minutes, so 40, 50 years of experience, but that's what it is. How I got into doing this is a kind of a funny story, and I think a lot of us probably went down a road similar to ours. We started to experience medical apartheid here, and a number of people that I knew were becoming more and more isolated. We didn't choose to partake in the genetic experiment that they foisted on the public. So we essentially decided to start, if you will, it was a social club, a dinner club, so that we could meet with regularly with people, have some kind of company, and meet with the people of similar mindsets. So, we met a couple of times and had some nice dinner parties, and we really felt good about that. But we just knew there was something missing, and so a small group of us in the larger group of about 35 broke off, and we decided we really needed to do something. We needed to contribute something to this, and just like probably a lot of you folks out there, you're bewildered as to what to do. I was in a symposium all day today, and there was doctor after doctor, very knowledgeable people who were telling, what had happened and what the medical terms for it were, and people were listening, but I could tell people were bewildered. Okay, we have this information. Now, what do we do? And that's the same question that we had. And so somebody suggested that we should pull together some kind of a report, which we could refer to law enforcement. And the discussion around that was, you can't bring in expert testimony on something like that. And the reason for that is Canada's not far off from the United States. I mean, you guys have Supreme Court justice nominees that don't know what a woman is. And it's the same here. You can pay an expert to say anything, and the government could come up with an expert to counter you. So in consideration of that, we thought, what if we actually just use the data that the government of Canada is reporting? And in Canada, they have an agency called Statistics Canada, and reports all kinds of information. So what we did was we used their data. We didn't question it. We didn't alter it. We didn't, when they reported 100 COVID deaths, we didn't dispute that. And we all know that's in dispute. I mean, what was a COVID death? How do you define that? How was the testing done? We didn't dispute any of that. We just simply took their statistics and looked at them and analyzed them and tried to figure out exactly what they were saying. So that's the genesis of where this came from. And the report is built around a representation to the police that they need to do something. It's not a complete, fully worked out investigation, but it's enough that we said these are the crimes, these are the alleged perpetrators, this is the timing of the event, and these are the rules and regulations that say, Mr. Police or Mrs. Police, you must act. So that was how the thing was going.
Now, Ken, I want to emphasize this point. So it isn't new data that you found. This is actually the government data.
Yes.
So you're using their data as evidence against them.
You know, I spent a lot of time in trial, and a dear friend of mine who's a lawyer, I remember sitting at trial with him once, and probably like a lot of your listeners, in trial, I'm kind of like the old guy watching a football game on a Saturday, you know, remembering the glory days 50 years ago in high school. And I'm sitting there beside him, and I'm thinking, why don't you ask this question? Why don't you ask that question? And when there was a break, I said to him, you know, how come you didn't ask this? And how come you didn't ask that? These would have been really good questions. And he said to me, you know, when I'm in trial, I will never ask a defendant a question that I already am not certain what he's going to answer. And based on that, we tried to figure out what data could we use? What things could we use? Well, the answer is the government's own words, the government's own numbers. And so that's why we did that. And that's why we didn't question it.
Okay, so what did you discover? I'm sure a number of things, but let's start with any one you want. What did you discover in your analysis of the data that was given to you by the government?
Well, we looked at it in a bunch of different ways. The first way we looked at it is we looked at their messaging, and we compared it to the numbers and the statistics that they were reporting at the same time. And it was really interesting. You really had to be on your toes to understand what they were saying, because they were presenting it in such a way that it would lead you to believe something, but they weren't really using lying words. For instance, they were reporting percentages of COVID deaths based on the number of people they tested that tested positive. So, in other words, if they tested 1 million people and 500,000 of them were tested positive with COVID, and X number of them died with COVID. And I know you're right, there's a dispute about dying from or with COVID, and we can talk about that later. But they were expressing your risk of dying of COVID as the percentage of people that died divided by the number of infected people. And that's ridiculous, because there's 38 million people in Canada. And unless you're testing every one of those 38 million every day, because the infections are coming and going, you know, you're getting better, you're getting sick, unless you're testing all 38 million every day, you don't know how many people have gotten infected. And therefore, you don't know how many people are dying.
I have a question to follow up on your point. Here in the States, and I'm sure in Canada, there's been a mystery that needs to be solved. And the mystery is this, and maybe you found the data, maybe you didn't. And frankly, I'd like to know how many people actually passed away with pre-existing conditions after they caught COVID, and then after they got the jab. There he goes, folks. This guy, there he goes. He's going right to the data. I love it. All right, buddy. This is great. This is great. Remind me of a good lawyer in court. You ask a question. Oh, I got it right here, Lieutenant.
Well, I've got a partial answer to that, because the government of Canada did report, and it said that out of all of the people that died that they reported as dying of COVID-19, that 46% of them, 46% had at least 3 serious comorbidities.
Wow.
And also 86.9 or 90% of all the deaths were in the age group 80 and above.
So how those are damning statistics against the government, in view of the fact that they have mandated people to actually whether it be wear masks or vaccines, etc. So how do they explain this? I mean, did you ever get an explanation from anybody?
No, they just fudge the data, and they make graphs and stuff that don't make any sense. And I'll give you an example. They express to you. We talked a little bit about how they were expressing the risk of dying of COVID, and they were fudging those numbers, and it was ridiculous numbers they were telling us, and people still don't quite understand that. So I put it this way: it's like me telling you, Steve, you can't go outside tonight because if you go outside, you've got a 100% chance of dying if you get hit by a bulldozer. And that statement's true. But the trouble is, it doesn't take into account the probability that when you step outside of your house in suburban, wherever it is, a bulldozer is going to come by and run you over. So that's how they were manipulating the message. Again, they weren't really lying, but they were manipulating them in a ridiculous way so that it sounded right, and it wasn't a complete outright lie, but it was ridiculous what they were saying. So that's how they did it. And there's dozens of examples of that we found.
I question. I'll tell you. Somebody asked me a question before, and I'm going to ask you it. How did this become worldwide? I mean, now you got one country, Canada, where obviously you find that the statistics are skewed. I believe they're skewed here. Fact checkers, Facebook world. I said I believe. It's not a fact they were skewed. All right, but my point is that there are a lot of doubts and a lot of questions that the government here in the United States and obviously in Canada are not answering. But now the question is, how did this become a worldwide so-called pandemic? I mean, if your statistics, and I believe you're a man of credibility, and I believe them, all right? If your statistics are true, then if the same type of research was done here and in every other country around the world, we might find, wow, they all match.
Yeah, it's starting to be done now. I just saw a study come out of Ireland, and they kind of did the same thing we did now. I'd like to say they copied us, but I don't know. But they were finding the same thing. And how did it happen? I don't know. I mean, if you watch the news at night and you turn on, I don't care what station it is, and they're telling a story, they're using exactly the same phraseology on every single station. You've seen it, I've seen it. And we see that around the world now, whether you're watching the news in Britain or in Germany or a number of other places. It's not just the stories the same, but the exact words are the same. How does that happen? I don't know the answer to that. I have my suspicions, but yeah. I don't know what the answer to that is.
Well, absolutely right. I have my suspicions too, and it's hard to prove a lot of things we're thinking about. And of course, unfortunately, there's a lot of conspiracy theories that are not true, and they become a distraction. But I believe what is true is that somewhere, some leaders, whether they be in the medical community, the science community, somebody looked at this stuff and decided to say, well, we've got a pandemic and we've got serious problems ahead of us. Look, I believe that people, have to learn. They have to get educated before they make decisions regarding what they're going to put into their bodies. This is why, Ken, what you have done is very important, because it supports the idea that, hey, wait a minute, before we take a step and jab in our kids. As you were reading, I just got this bulletin that the CDC here says that young kids under 5 can now get the jab. I mean, I'm really totally against that when it comes to children. So now you have a pandemic, if you will, which enables the government to have some sort of control over the people with regard to their health. The World Health Organization, of course, got slapped in the face a couple of weeks ago with this idea that they were going to be the guru of world health and literally take our sovereignty with regard to health away, and they were going to make the decisions. Well, that didn't fly very well. But you've got stats now, and this is what is going through my mind. You've got stats, and I'm thinking to myself, you know what? I got to get these stats. I got to get this report you have, because I want to get your report to our elected officials here, the Republican elected officials. I don't trust the other side, because your report, and let me say this, Ken, as the physical report that we were given worldwide by the truckers convoy in Canada, that was the trigger that awakened the world to these problems, and you may have yourself a trigger that is going to awaken a lot of governments with regard to some facts that they need to know and they need to check out. So now, where do you go from here?
Well, the report, again, we designed it for the police, but what we found is that it's gone nationwide, and we've got thousands, if not tens of thousands of people downloading this, printing it, walking into their government representatives' offices, giving it to their doctors, giving it to their school boards. Every single member of parliament has got this report, I don't know, 10 times, 15 times, both physically, email, and by registered mail. And, you know, when we got into this, we said, if we send this to, if we send it to every member of parliament, which we did, but they get it once, they're going to ignore us. It'll be in the garbage faster than it got onto their table. But when 1,000 people, 10,000 people send it, and they're getting it from all corners of the country, and they are, then they start to listen, and they can't be ignored then. I mean, we're still working on the police, and we got some fascinating information from the police just in the last day or two. You won't believe what they told us.
Ken, I don't want to tip something here. I got to be rather careful how I say this. Okay, we've got something pretty big going on with regard to what's going on in Canada, and this report, the timing of it is interesting. It may become very critical as to what we're going to do within the framework of the law. For those who would think that we're going to start a revolution or something, no, we're going to work within the framework of the law. But I'm talking about a very critical legal process that actually was brought to our attention. And so if you can get that report to me, I'd appreciate it. And also, now, how could anybody get the report from you? How could there's going to be thousands of Canadians and Americans here who are going to be watching this. How can they get that report from you?
Well, you could go to our website and download it. Our website is www.thetruefactsc19.com, and maybe somebody can put that in the chat. On that website, very straightforward website, there's right on the front page, there's the report. You can click download it. You can download the appendices. There's like 3,000 pages of appendices. There's we're not only trying to get the information out there, but we're trying to enlist people on a grassroots level to distribute this thing. And we're making it as easy as we can, so they can download it. They can download a template that prints out these business cards, and it's got the cover of the report on it. It's got the website, and you turn it over. And I know some people don't like QR codes, but there's a QR code there. You click on it, it downloads it into your phone. You can these are being handed out by the thousands and thousands and thousands across Canada. So you download it. And then we encourage you to subscribe. It doesn't cost anything, but what you'll get is you'll get news flashes from us about what's going on, what's the latest strategies with the government and the police, what kinds of successes are we having, what kinds of failures. And we're actually reporting, or we will soon start reporting, names and badge numbers of police and police stations that are refusing the report. So we're going to say who's accepting it and who's denying it. And we're going to let the public know.
And Ken, with regard to that issue with the police department, boy, let us know, okay? We have a project called Project Maple Leaf. In fact, I'm meeting with our team tonight after this broadcast, and we are not investigating the government, not investigating a government official. We're doing research, and we're gathering information that is going to go to who? Well, the entire United States Congress, as well as the Parliament in Canada and elsewhere. And we want them to know exactly what's going on with regard to facts. And also the International Association of Police Chiefs are pulling together information going to send to them. And why are we doing this? We're not looking to burn anybody. But look, folks, right, Ken, if you don't learn from history, history is bound to repeat itself. And so we need to get this information together so that this does not happen in the future. Now, Ken, with relation to the report, I'm watching these chats here, and boy, people are going to be hungry for this. I think what's important is for people to understand this, and I'd like you to weigh in on this one. We've been sharing with people for a long, long time that they need to step up and get involved. That sitting back and yelling at the television set and getting upset isn't going to help the situation. By all means, thousands of people, I know probably the thousands or so that are going to watch this broadcast are getting involved, but what was the impetus for you to get involved? I don't think you ever planned in your life that you would ever do a research project like this. And you're in the middle of history now. You see, this is another issue. Somebody a long, long way off from now, when we're gone, is going to be reading their history books, and they're going to read your report. They're going to read what all of us across America and Canada has done. What got you to where you are now, and what can you do to encourage people to not sit back, but to get involved?
Well, again, we started this going down a certain road where we were just being ostracized in our society. So we sought out people of similar beliefs and similar backgrounds, and we started to meet. And then we decided we needed to do more. And to be completely honest with you, and maybe this isn't the best answer, but I got involved in that, but I didn't initially volunteer to do this. Do you know when they talk about that still small voice that you hear? Well, I actually hear that voice, and she's about 5'4", and she's brunette, and I'm married to her, and she pretty much volunteered me that Ken could do this. And I wish I had a better explanation, but that's the truth.
Well, you know what? I'm glad you brought that up. The still small voice. I don't hear a audible voice. All right, but I really believe that we get a calling from God. I believe that there is a voice from heaven that speaks to our hearts. People would say to me, "Well, you know what, Lieutenant, I like to get involved, but I'm not qualified." And I try to share with them that God never calls the qualified; He qualifies the called. And I think at this period in time in history, I'm seeing. And look, I'm not a preacher, all right? I'm a political leader here in the United States, but I'm beginning to see prophecies become actually true before our very eyes. And I'm beginning to hear from people that I would have never imagined I'd be talking to, like yourself. And I'm beginning to realize, well, as God called people in the Old Testament days, we're living in the late New Testament days. He's calling all of us. So yeah, through your wife, God bless her. I mean, it something motivated her to share with you that this is something you got to do. And I think that's a good thing. So no matter where the voice comes from, maybe it's important we realize that we've got a great, great mission. And it may just be that call from the guy upstairs.
Yeah, it may well be. And like I said, this report isn't just giving you information. We've got lots of information coming at us from everywhere, but this report is a tool that an ordinary citizen can use. You download it, you walk down to your mayor's office or your school board, or send it to your member of parliament or your senator. Get it out there. And like I've said before, yesterday it was a dry day here in Manitoba, but it started to rain, and the grass was nice and dry before it started to rain. But drop by drop, that yard got soaked, and I got puddles all over the place now. And that's how this has got to work. This is grassroots. This is an individual making a decision to take this thing, print it, or email it, take it down somewhere, and give it to somebody. And that gives them some hope, something to do.
Ken, stand by. We'll be back in about 15 seconds, all right? Why don't you get a cold glass of water like I am right here, and then we'll be back. Give me about 15 seconds. Thank you.
Sure.
All right, folks, POWERBLAST Canada, great company, great people, great family business, and that's what we're all about. Great people, great family business, and great patriots looking to advance the cause of freedom and individual liberty and rights. So let's talk about that a minute, Ken. Liberty, individual liberties, individual rights. You think that this has something to do with a reason to curtail our rights? This went beyond the scope. This went beyond a pandemic. This was a political epidemic, in my view, where pastors were arrested, people were fined. I mean, all over the place, all over the world. Of course, it's now backfiring on them because people are waking up and they're analyzing what you have analyzed and the research with people like you have done. What do you think of that? The movement of the government, if you will, piggybacking a pandemic to really curtail people's rights.
Well, I think what we're seeing right now is just the whole COVID response is just a symptom of something else. People have been going to sleep for years. They're watching TV. They're doing this, they're doing that. When I look at what's gone on in our society over the last 25, 30 years, we used to have service clubs. We used to have churches involved more in the community, taking care of the community, private charitable organizations. We were more community-based 20, 30 years ago. And slowly over time, we've been abrogating our responsibilities as citizens to big corporations, to government, to experts. And so now we're in a point where these people that we've abrogated our rights to, they're starting now to look at their own benefit. They're multinational organizations now. They're multinational governments. They're not representing us anymore. And as long as we stay asleep and they can get away with this, then they're going to. My grandfather used to have an expression, and he said, "Do you think my children do what I tell them to do because they love me?" And it's the same with your government. As long as you're not watching, as long as they're not afraid of you, as long as they think they can get away with it, they will. And so this COVID thing, this is just the first in a whole series of things that I believe are going to start happening or are in the process of happening.
You bring up a good point. We're not communicating with each other physically. I remember as a kid, we had church organizations. We had the scouting was terrific.
Yeah.
We had even school dances. We had all kinds of places we can go, to Cub Scouts, the Boy Scouts, the Girl Scouts. And today, there doesn't seem to be that much more communication. And I would say this, at least here in America, what we're trying to do, I don't know how your school structures are set up. Maybe you could educate me a little on that. But we have parent-teacher organizations, parent-teacher associations, where parents actually get very involved in their school district, more so than anything with fundraising. But now, because of what's been going on with regard to the critical race theory and the education that the government's trying to force on everyone, parents are now not only getting involved in fundraising, they're getting involved in helping select textbooks and even running for school boards and getting elected, and then by a very low-level local process, begin to climb up the ladder to make change. So to your point, we've kind of got to get back to that. And we've got to. Any suggestions that you could give to our audience out there?
Well, generally speaking, we're very, very similar in the United States. Our school structure is very similar. And again, the way to get this back is on a very grassroots level. Over the last 2 years, folks in my political riding have been trying to contact our representative in Parliament. And you'd think this guy was abducted by the UFO, because nobody's heard of him since the damn election. And I was at a political rally 2 weeks ago, and this guy, who no one's seen in 2-3 years, has the nerve to show up and introduce the head speaker. And I know I shouldn't have done this, but I was sitting in the crowd and I said, "Where have you been for the last 2 years?" And as long as they can get away with it, how do we address this? We've got another grassroots solution. It doesn't take much. In my riding, there's only 72,000 registered voters. You get 5,000 people together, and as a block, and you tell these guys, "I want you to come and visit us personally 4 times a year, and you better start listening to us." They will listen. I guarantee it. And that's not a lot. 5,000 people isn't a lot in one of our ridings, which is similar to your thing. But again, grassroots people demanding the service that they're paying for and that under the Constitution we deserve.
Well, you're right. It is grassroots. Words of encouragement to our Canadian friends. We just had more primaries this past Tuesday, and we have really wiped out a lot of these Republicans, if you will, who have not been living up to their promises to the people, which is to advance conservative values. So we're going to have running, Ken, against the Democrat, liberal / communists of this country, very strong conservative Republicans, and the poll numbers are astounding. They're going to be a big shift here in America come November, a big shift. And I'm hoping we basically just destroy the entire Democrat Party. There's a party, Ken, that has done a lot of damage to our country. Our crime is way up. The fact of the matter is that we've got to make those changes, as you are going to be in Canada. And I share that with you because people who feel hopeless and helpless, just look south, folks. Look south. I mean, we're going down a rabbit hole here with this war in Ukraine, it may end up a real problem for us here. But we're not going to ignore the fact that our freedom and liberty is being jeopardized here, and that your freedom and liberty is being jeopardized. Because, Ken, I get the questions. Why are you guys so involved with Canada? Well, the fact of the matter is, Canada was off our radar. A great country. Nobody would have ever believed what we're seeing and hearing about Canada now. Our focus was south of the border. And now I've concluded, and I'm sure many have, that the real threat is not from south of the border. We can handle that. We see it. What we don't see is the real national security threat, in my opinion, coming from Canada and from a guy named Justin Trudeau. So this is why research like yours is important. And as you say, grassroots people, get out there. Very, very important.
Absolutely. You know what? If you try to stand alone against this, you're overwhelmed, and you don't know what to do. But get together with your neighbor, do something small. And again, this report, that's part of the magic of it. We can give it to each other. It's funny. Our national police force here, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the RCMP, so far have refused to investigate this. But you know what they're investigating? They're investigating war crimes and crimes against humanity in the Ukraine.
Yeah.
They have no mandate outside of Canada. Shouldn't they be investigating these allegations in Canada before they go to the Ukraine?
Well, they may be investigated. They themselves may be investigated. And I've always believed this. Nobody gets away with a crime. They all get caught, especially when it comes to corruption in government. And to those cops out there, I'm one of you, all right? Spent 38 years in police service. I've always told the people who worked for me, the ones that I supervise, always tell the truth, be transparent. The cover-up is worse than the crime. And Ken, I know you've probably experienced this in life too, that these politicians that are up here, okay, and they get everybody below them involved in criminal activity or unethical activity. Well, when it hits the fan, if you think that politician is going to come to protect you, forget about it, because it's all going to come on you. And I think people need to understand that, especially the ones who are involved. And I urge police officers of all ranks, especially those who broke the law. I saw the videos. I saw the cops breaking windows, and those videos came here, but it went elsewhere. We've made sure it went elsewhere. So this isn't over. This is far from being over. So if you're a cop and you put up that blue wall to protect some politician, that wall is going to come crumbling down on you. You better get a lawyer. And you better start talking now. Sooner or later, it catches up to you. So that's why I say work within the framework of the law. And Ken, that's why we share with people on the air, work within the framework of the law. There's no need to break the law. There's no need to do crazy things. Look at the way the truckers and the protesters in Canada conducted themselves with honor, with dignity. Here in the United States, when we had, January 6th is a big deal here. But we had thousands and thousands and thousands of Americans protesting, marching peacefully. And you got a few people that, and of course, the Congress don't want to hear from you, there were hundreds. Well, let's say there were 200. Okay, I don't know how many. But we said all along, Ken, those who broke into the Capitol and committed those crimes, well, they got to pay the price. Simple as that. But you don't paint the picture of the 10,000 or so that were there. Same thing with Canada. We had government people emailing me after we were on the air about this, and I know they're government people or let's say supporters of the government, sending me pictures of one guy at the truckers' convoy holding a Confederate flag. One guy, and they're saying, "Well, here they come. The American rebels are on the way." But you see, that's what the media picks up.
Yeah. But you know what? There's a very interesting point about that. And I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah.
Out of all of those people, and there's this one guy with a mask on holding a Confederate flag. You watch the video, and standing behind him is a guy with a beard and a camera. That's Justin Trudeau's personal photographer. I'm telling you that. I'm telling you the truth. That's a fact.
You're kidding me.
I'm not kidding you.
Wow. That's
What's the
Okay.
chances of that?
Yeah, well, you know what? That's very interesting. We'll talk about that later on. Boy, you learn something every day. Well,
Yeah.
Ken, listen, please give your website out again. And folks, here's what I'm going to do. Hold on there, Ken. I'm going to put this here. Now, if you didn't get Ken's website, and I'm going to ask him to repeat it a couple times, campaignforamerica.com. That's our website. Go to our contact page. Now, in the narrative, just say, would like to have Ken's website, and we'll email it to you. Okay? We'll just email it right out to you. And Ken, if you could, I'll hook you up with David Doolin. He's our,
Yep.
boy, what a great patriot he is. He's our representative in Canada, and I'm sure he'll be in touch with you. We'll get your report, and we're going to get it out to our congressional representatives. So we're doing God's work, Ken. And all of the people out there watching right now, remember, I really mean it. You're doing God's work. We're living at a period of time in history that means a lot to us, but more so to future generations of Canadians and Americans and everyone throughout the free world. So I'll give you the last word, Ken.
I appreciate it. The website is, I've been watching the feed. It's thetruefactsc19.com. So thetruefactsc19.com. And like I said, go on there, download all the resources that you want, but make sure you subscribe, and you'll get all the updates as things progress.
Well, Ken, it's an honor to know you. You've been very courageous and very helpful, and I'm watching numbers go up. I look at the feeds, and the numbers are climbing. A lot of people were listening. And as we said, and I know you agree, people have to do research themselves, and they have to look at reports like yours and others, and make your own decisions, folks, as to what's best for you. I, for one, will not allow the government to tell me what to do and how to do it. This is why we're fighting here in America, and we're winning. You're winning in Canada, despite what your media may be saying or doing or advertising. Believe me, we get a lot of news coming out of Canada, unbiased. And boy, I tell you, you're winning this fight. Just give it a little time. All right, Ken, thanks a lot.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
So folks, again, I know I say this after every broadcast. You look for heroes. You look for people who are going to stand up. You look for people who are going to fight for what's right. Well, here's another one. Here's another real courageous patriot. Calm guy, articulate guy, regular guy like all of us, took the time to do some research. And I find it fascinating that he actually took the data that the government put out and used it against them. So they can't accuse him of fudging anything, because if they accuse him of fudging anything, he'll say, well, you guys gave us the data, so you fudged it. That's pretty brilliant on my part, on his part. All right, so remember, folks, Monday night, we're going to be talking about the situation regarding our Second Amendment here. And I think, and I would say this, some of the Canadian audience, you might want to tune in, because, some of these things happening here in America may have a ripple effect in Canada. But Friday night, the 1st, I will be honored to be part of your celebration. We're going to move our broadcast from Thursday to Friday night. And that's how close we've gotten. America and Canada together, right, folks? That's how close we have gotten, that we're going to share each other's celebration on the air. I don't know if any other TV network or broadcast is doing that, but we're sure going to do it. And a word of encouragement, believe me, I still get the letters, and I just, working hard to answer them all. But just remember this, folks. We were created, you were created by God a long time ago, all right? For what? For this time. For right now, this time in the history of our nations. Our children can't fight this fight. Just like when we were kids, right? We couldn't fight the fight. We didn't know what was going on. We were playing baseball and football, and our world was so different as children, right? And our parents, little did we know what our parents were going through. World War I, World War II, all kinds of depressions and economic collapses, and worrying about how the bills are going to be paid and how they're going to get their kids to school. That's what our parents were going through. But I want you to think about something. They did it. They were successful for a number of reasons. They worked hard, right? They certainly did. They kept the family together. They did. But they did something that we're not doing today as nations, and we should do. And I believe that Ken had talked about it. We need to pray, folks. We need to understand that we, all of us, and I did at one time in my life, I'll admit it to you, we divorced ourselves from God. Not that we stopped believing him in, but I kind of think we kind of ignored him as nations. We kind of wake up in the morning, and I used to do this. I think I shared this with you. Every morning I'd wake up at 4 or 5. That's what time I wake up, and I used to grab this right away. Oh, what happened overnight? What does Lieutenant Rogers need to know? What in the world happened overnight? Well, folks, I'm going to tell you something. I got so depressed and distressed within 15 minutes of reading what's on there, I couldn't get back to sleep. I had a bad habit of doing that. Then I realized, you know what? Maybe I ought to pick something else up in the morning. And here's what I did. I picked this up. I pick this up every morning, 4 or 5 o'clock. And you know what I do? I'll read the Psalms. I'll read the Proverbs. I'll read a scripture. Like today, I read scriptures out of Jeremiah. And it just filled my heart and soul. And I got to feel better. And it basically was this. It was my communication with God. Now, people will ask, well, you know, he don't talk back to you, so it's a one-way trip, right? A one-way talk? No, it isn't, folks, because you know how God communicates with us? Yeah, I believe, as Ken said, with a still small voice in the heart, soul, and spirit of us. But here it is, his words. He communicates through his Bible. He communicates through his last will and testament. You know what Bible means? The book of life. It's all there. Every problem you have, it's in here. Every solution to your problems, it's in here. Some of the problems we face are difficult. I know many of you watching are in financial straits. I know that. I know many of you may have some illnesses. You're worried about your kids. You're worried about your country. You're worried about your freedom. Worry, worry, worry. And that's natural to worry. Jesus worried. He worried when he was on that cross. Father, make this pass from me if you could. You know, he knows how it is. But because he knows how it is, he's given us an outlet. He's given us himself through the power of the Holy Spirit. I'm not going to lead you to believe that you're going to say a prayer tonight, tomorrow morning, your problems are gone. But I'll tell you what you're going to feel. I'll bet you'll feel some peace through the storm. And then he'll find a way. How many times have I thought there is no way to get out of a problem? There is no way. I've tried everything except I needed to do more trusting in God, trusting in Christ than anything else. And somehow, some way, guess what? The problem goes away. He helps me find a way to deal with the problem, to address it, and I move on to the next problem, right? There's always a problem. But that refines us, that sharpens us, and that helps us to trust in him. That's why we're going to win, folks. Freedom and liberty. They're gifts from God. He ain't going to let that go. No way, folks. He's not going to let that go. That's it. All right. So it's 7:47. I'm going to wrap it up, folks. See you Monday night here on the U.S. edition. But get ready. July 1st. That'll be my first time celebrating with a country who we dearly love, Canada, celebrating their Canada Day. All right. Mr. Dolan there, Mr. Doolin, David Doolin told me it's Dominion of Canada Days. I think that's the official word for it, but I just can't wait to be with you to do that. So campaignforamerica.com. Folks, if you want Ken's website, just email us. We'll capture your emails off of that, and we'll add you to our list of people we send our newsletters out to. All right, folks, see you. I pray for all of you. I thank you. Remember, there's a God above who loves you. Going to take care of you, take care of your kids, take care of your family. Instead of looking down, like we all do once in a while, you know what we need to do? Let's look up. Let's look up and remember that scripture that says, I looked upon the hills, whence cometh my help. And that help is from God. Have a good evening. I'll see you next week. God bless you. And God bless freedom-loving people all over the world. I'm Lieutenant Stephen.